everybody, Lloyd here with another Versus video, and today we're looking at Disney Villainous versus Marvel Villainous. I got my villain shirt on, I'm ready to get evil. Let's dive into these games and see what's alike and what's different. Okay, so first off, Disney Villainous is a 2 to 6 player game where you are playing as Disney villains such as Hook, Ursula, Jafar, Maleficent, and a couple of them, the Queen of Hearts and Prince John. Couldn't remember the last one. And you are the villain in that particular Disney story. So if you've seen the movie relating to that character, then you know what their evil plan is. And in Disney Villainous, that's what you are trying to do. You're trying to complete your evil plan. However, there are other villains who are trying to complete their evil plan as well. And there can only be one villain that completes their plan and wins. That is Disney Villainous. Marvel Villainous is pretty much the same idea as Disney Villainous, except Marvel Villainous is 2 to 4 players. You're playing as Marvel villains, and specifically these are Marvel villains from the MCU, kind of, sort of, but they do lean heavily on the actual comics themselves. So it's a little bit of a crossbreed. But in this one, you have Thanos, Hera, Ultron, Killmonger, and Taskmaster. Okay, and much like Disney Villainous, if you've seen the movies or read some of the comic books, then you might be familiar with the plot that you're trying to accomplish. It's not as cut and dry as Disney Villainous, in the sense that if you've seen the movie, you know what's going on. Because like I said, this one does rely on the comic books a little bit. So characters like Taskmaster and Ultron aren't necessarily the same storyline as what you saw in the MCU. But if you've seen some of the MCU movies, then you will be a little bit familiar with like Thanos and him trying to gather the stones. Both of these games, you're playing villains. And both of these games actually have some expansions out. Disney Villainous came out a couple of years before Marvel Villainous. I'm not sure the exact year on it, but it came out a couple years before Marvel Villainous. It's been out for about 3 or 4 years now, and they've put out several expansions. Now, the expansions are 3 characters that come in a box, and right out of the box, you can play those expansions. You don't need the base game, which is really cool. And I think they've put out about 4 or 5 as of this video. They've added other characters like Cruella de Vil, Hades, Scar, Oogie Boogie. So they've added other characters from other Disney movies, and they're basically pulling. I mean, they have the whole Disney vault to pull villains from. So they've added quite a few. So you can, if this box set isn't exactly your cup of tea in terms of characters, then there are other boxes that you can buy and you can play with just those characters. The only difference, of course, is that you only have 3 characters, so the most you can play with is 3 people. Marvel Villainous, as of this recording, has only put out 1. I'm not actually sure of everyone who's in that one. I know Loki is in it, but I'm not 100% sure on who else is in the box. Actually, I will, put some little notes across the bottom here to show you who else comes in the box in both of these. That's about where these two games, their similarities end. The one thing that they've done a little bit differently is in the way that they can mix and match together. Disney Villainous, you can take any of the expansions and mix them in with the Disney core set. Marvel Villainous, you can take that expansion and mix it in with any of the characters from Marvel Villainous. What you can't do What you can't do is you can't take Marvel Villainous and cross it up with Disney Villainous. The two aren't compatible. So even though they're essentially the same exact game system, they work with the same currencies, they work with the same card mechanics, they even have the same types of player boards. They look the same, they smell the same, they act the same, but they're different. And where they are different is actually, I think, what makes Marvel Villainous a little bit better than Disney Villainous. So in the game, each character that's in the game has a deck of cards that you play for the villain. And they also have what's called a fate deck. The fate deck is essentially the good guys that are trying to fight back against the villains in their story. Both games, each character comes with their own specific villain and fate deck. The fate deck in Disney Villainous will have characters from that movie. So if you're playing as Hook, you're going to get Peter Pan and the Lost Boys and Tinkerbell and stuff like that. If you are playing as Ursula, you're going to get Flounder and the Little Mermaid herself and the prince and her father, Poseidon. You're going to get all those people trying to work against Ursula. And then her villain deck is going to have her henchmen and stuff that are going to help her. In Marvel Villainous, again, the characters come with a fate deck. And just like Disney Villainous, in the fate deck are a bunch of heroes and plot lines, or plot elements that are working to foil the villains. So, for instance, if you go up against Killmonger, you're going to end up fighting Black Panther and Okoye and other characters like Shuri and stuff. Those characters are going to be in there, and probably I think there's a couple of other Avengers that jump in to help. That's where the similarities between the fate decks end with these two games and why they're not compatible. In Disney Villainous, that fate deck is specific to that villain. So when I'm playing as Hook and I have my Peter Pan fate, or my fate deck based on Peter Pan, Peter Pan doesn't affect any of the other characters, any other the villains in the game. That little Captain Hook world is completely isolated from the rest of the games. So whenever you're playing, when someone chooses to take a fate action, which is one of the actions you take in the game, in order to mess with another player, because there is that these games do have take that with the fate decks. That's how you interrupt what the other characters are trying to accomplish and how you get their heroes into play to stop them. In Disney Villainous, the way it works is on my player board, I choose to play a fate action. I move my little mover to the fate action space. I do the fate action, and right then and there, I choose one of the other players at the table who I want to fate. Once I do that, I draw a couple cards from their fate deck, and then I choose one of the cards to play against them. The upside and downside of that is that for the most part, whenever I draw those cards, that's really the end of my agency. I look at the two cards that are there and I play probably whatever's the worst one that can possibly be there. But in the selection process, I'm probably going to select the person who's closest to winning. That's not necessarily going to work out the best always as the best play. Because the cards are random, even though I draw two, I could draw two of the same card. I could draw two cards that do absolutely nothing. And they, I have to play one, and it was kind of a waste of a turn. In Marvel Villainous, the way the fate decks work, there is a central fate deck that has some generic fate cards in it. And then each villain has their own fate deck along with them. Like I said, you're going to take all the fate decks from all the players playing the game, and you're going to shuffle them into that generic fate deck. And once you decide to take the fate action, instead of choosing a player first, you draw from the fate deck, And then once you have the card, you choose where you want to play it. Now, typically, you're probably still going to go after the player that's closest to winning. But if the card is not really going to affect them in any way, then it's not a waste of a turn because you can take that card and play it somewhere else. That's where one of the big differences lie. Marvel Villainous, it's all happening in the Marvel universe. So Taskmaster has crossed over with Ultron, who's crossed over with Hela. It's all one comic book world, just like the movies are all one big universe, cinematic universe. Everything's interconnected. So the characters can interact with other characters. So just because I drew Captain America doesn't mean he has to go against Taskmaster. He can also go against Ultron, or he can join the fight to help fight Thanos. I mean, it's really one universe shared, and anybody can fight anybody. And Disney Villainous, you can't really do that. You're locked into that bottle world. So you're kind of choosing you're choosing the player that you want to attack, and then hoping you get a good card. Whereas Marvel Villainous, you're drawing the cards and then using the information on the cards to determine the best place to play the card. Now, granted, a lot of times you're going to go after the lead player, but it does give you that sense of agency in that I drew these cards. Where's the best place to put them? Where am I getting the best bang for my buck so I didn't waste a turn? Even if I'm not, slowing down the leader, I am being able to slow down someone. And that's kind of the weird thing about Villainous, is that you have to know how the rest of the characters work, so you can kind of look around the table and see where people are and see how close they are to finishing their goals. However, just because someone has 6 of the 7 steps required, that 7th step could be very difficult. For Ultron, for instance, his is all about leveling up his bots. So getting like the first 2 or 3 levels is very simple. And then trying to get that last one requires a lot of very specific cards to be in play. But a lot of those cards are also used for other things. So it's very hard to get them into your hand and get them out on the table to do it. So just because Ultron gets really close to, becoming Super Ultron, the actual end goal may not be as close. And if you're paying attention to what the other player's doing, you kind of know if they even have access to those cards. Have you seen those cards? Do you know they're in their discard pot? Things like that. So again, I like the fact that agency is there, and I can choose where to play the card to get the biggest bang for my buck and really slow somebody down. Because maybe the person who's closest to the goal isn't necessarily the one that's actually going. Some of the characters have a slower ramp up, and once they get going, they're really hard to stop. So if you can stop that initial ramp, then you can really slow them down and slow down their engine. One of the other ways that these differ is directly tied into that previous point about the Fate deck, which is that Marvel Villainous happens all within the same universe. All these characters can interact. So what that means is, and what actually happens with a lot of the characters in this core set, you can go to other players' worlds. You can go to other characters' worlds. Taskmaster has to recruit people from other players' areas. So he needs to get his agents and go over to other players' worlds to infiltrate, to cause havoc. Thanos has to do the same thing. Other players will get the Infinity Stones, and he has to send out his Black Order to different players in order to collect those stones and bring them back. And I think that's really cool, because now not only am I interacting with just the Fate deck, my actual quests, my mission, my storyline requires that I go interact with other players. And I'm not just necessarily throwing a Fate card on you just because I want to hurt you. I mean, it's going to hurt you, but it may be a secondary motive to why I needed to go over there in the first place. Like I did a Fate so I could hopefully get a hero out so that one of my characters can go over there and knock out that hero, or do something on the other side, or use that hero to help take you out. So I like that interconnectedness that Marvel Villainous has. And that is why these two are not compatible. Same with their expansions. Like, you can't take any of the Disney Villainous expansions and bring them over into Marvel Villainous. Disney Villainous, they're all separate worlds. Toy Story never crossed over with Nightmare Before Christmas and never crossed over with 101 Dalmatians. So you can't mix and match. They're not mixing and matching those movies together to make this movie mashup where, you know, it's a Disney universe, a shared universe, and everyone can go anywhere they want. Another difference of Marvel Villainous are the mission cards. So these are events that are in the Fate deck, and some of them are group missions that multiple players can attempt to go on to get benefits, and some of them will target specific players and hinder them, and they need to complete them in order to move on with their own plot. So if you're looking at which one you want to get, it really comes down to, I think, you know, what you want out of your game. Are you really into Disney characters? Are there some of your characters that are, you know, your favorite characters and you really want to play as those bad guys? Clearly, you're going to go after Disney Villainous. But if you're a big Marvel fan, this is the only way you're going to be able to play the Marvel villains and play as them. You know, you have games like Marvel Champions, where you're playing, again, heroes versus villains. You have Legendary. For the most part, it's heroes versus villains. Even Marvel United, it's mostly heroes versus villains. It's very rare you get to play as the villains. So if you want to play as Thanos, I mean, you can't play as Thanos in one of the Legendary expansions. You can play as Thanos. If you play the villain mode in Marvel United, which just came out with the X-Men Kickstarter, there's a villain mode. So I guess technically you can play as Thanos, but not in the same way. Like, you're not that character specifically trying to pull off a very devious plot. So if you want that, you're going to go with Marvel Villainous. If it just comes down to mechanics, again, I give the edge to Marvel Villainous. The fact that the world is interconnected and you can, you know, send your guys, your henchmen over to other people's lands to do stuff. And whenever you draw, you know, a Hulk card, you can decide who you want to Hulk smash. I think that's really cool. It gives you a couple more options. Like I said, Disney Villainous, it's very self-contained. All of the little worlds are self-contained. So aside from someone playing a Fate on you, you're pretty much in your own little solitaire game. Whereas Marvel Villainous, they kind of up the ante a little bit because you have to, like I said, a lot of the plots require you to go to other places and do things in other places' other players' lands. And just the ability to be able to choose where the best, you know, place to play that Fate card goes. I'm gonna have to lean towards Marvel Villainous for that. If you just kind of want the experience, they both do a lot of the same things. Obviously, they're the same core system. One of the other differences here is the player count. This one goes up to 6 players. This one only goes up to 4. I honestly think they learned from player feedback that playing this above 4 players is a bad time. I did play this with 6 players. There is a lot of downtime and there's a lot of stuff to keep track of, especially if you're trying to keep track of who's doing what. You need to know how all the other villains work, and trying to keep track of 5 other villains to see where they're at in relation to where you're at, to know, you know, who to target on your turn. It's a lot. And so I think you never want to play this at 6 players. You probably never want to play this above 4. And I would say probably 3 is the sweet spot for it. But like I said, I think technically you probably could throw 6 players in and it would hold up, but I don't think it's going to be the desired experience. Like I said, I've played it with 6. It did not go well. People lost interest because the turns were too long. Granted, if you played enough, I would imagine you would know what you're doing pretty well, and it's not all new, so you're going to be able to fly through the cards a little faster. But I was playing, it was like my 3rd or 4th time playing, and everyone I was playing with was brand new. They never played it before. And people lost interest. We didn't even finish the game just because people lost interest. The game went really, really long. Too long. There's not enough game here for it to be, you know, a 2+ hour game. Stick with lower player counts. And I think that's why I said they learned from player feedback that 4 is the max that you want to go. And so they limited this one to 4 players. That being said, production wise, they're both really cool. They have very nice production value. The player boards are, you know, cardboard. They unfold, so you have your little player world. They don't have minis. What they have are these little movers that kind of symbolize the character. So if you look at them, you kind of get a sense, but they're not actually minis of the character. So like in this one, the Thanos one is, it's not even his fist. It's like his headpiece, like his crown. So it kind of looks like his head. But I think those are pretty nice. And I think probably the reason they went with that is probably because it was easier to get those approved than modeling character sculpts. And they probably are easier and cheaper to sculpt than actual character minis because they are just kind of an idea of what the character is. Like if you look at them, you know, you kind of get an idea of like, oh, that's supposed to be that person because it kind of looks like an Ultron, looks like kind of like a robot head. So yeah, production wise, they're both really good. The box has like this linen finish on it, which makes for these little stickers. They are a nightmare. I tried to pull one of them off, I think, and it just didn't go well because of this kind of linen-y soft finish. So I just left the stickers on this one. The Villainous one doesn't have that same finish. So again, I think they learned something from their production value. It doesn't seem to have the same finish. The card quality, it's a weird card quality. They're almost like a thin cardboard versus being cardstock. So they do have a weird feel to them. But that being said, they're serviceable. I do think you may want to sleeve these games if you think they're going to get a lot of play. They're not quite as much shuffling through the deck as a deck builder, but you do go back through the deck quite a bit. Some of the characters really require you like burning through that deck as fast as possible to get it back into play so you can get to stuff, because a lot of this game is searching for cards in your deck to pull off your combo and kind of get things out into play. So you will have to go through your deck multiple times, sometimes in a game, to get what you need because you get it out of order and you got to get it back in the right order and stuff. So you may want to sleeve the game. I don't know how well the cards are going to hold up. Like I said, they are kind of a weird material. There are some complaints about the little well that comes inside that you put the points in, the points that you use to pay for things. They're power tokens. The little wells are very flimsy plastic and they will break easily. That said, you don't really need the well. It's just a little bowl that kind of holds it. It's cool that they, included it, but it was kind of unnecessary and it's not the best quality. Other than that, I don't really have any complaints about the quality. The game books all, go over everything really well. I was able to get up and, play without having too many questions. Each character comes with their own little guide to tell you exactly what you need to do. And kind of gives you some hints on which cards you should be using to do certain things, which is always nice. And again, it makes it easy to like, hey, what is your goal over there? And someone can just hand you their little packet so you can get a brief idea of what they're trying to do, just by looking at their little guide. You don't have to pull up past the rule book around and stuff like that. So that's a nice touch. So yeah, at the end of the day, choosing between the two Villainous games, I'm going to go with Marvel Villainous. Again, we've covered this on the channel. I am a Marvel nut. I have Marvel stuff everywhere. I have DC stuff too, but I like a lot of things Marvel. I think this one does play a little cleaner and faster. The fact that the way those fate decks work and the way that the worlds are interconnected are also really cool. I just think this one was a very good evolution off of the core system that's in here. And I understand kind of the ramifications, like why why they couldn't mix and match the worlds, because you're trying to play out the story of that character in that movie. And it would be kind of odd if Buzz showed up trying to help Ariel, stop Ursula. It's just kind of immersion breaking. So I like the fact that they stuck to their guns and kept everything in theme, so you don't break that barrier. But it does limit the actual gameplay value, and there was really no way around that. The way that Marvel, you can kind of, like I said, you can go to other people's lands. So that's my final verdict in this versus battle. Marvel Villainous gets the win. Yeah, that's the overall pick. It just has more stuff going for it. So that's it. Thanks for watching. If you have any comments, make sure to post. Any questions, let me know. I will get back to you with an answer as soon as possible. As always, like, share, subscribe so you can get notified of our newest videos when we post them. Like I said, we post 2-3 times a week sometimes. Check out our Discord. The link is in our description. Come say hi. Join us on Discord. Come argue with us. Tell me why I'm wrong about Disney Villainous being better than Marvel Villainous. I'll duke it out with you there. It's all in good fun. So until next time, stay tuned to the channel. Check us out on Discord. Look for another Versus video coming up in the future. If you haven't seen our other Versus videos, we've done quite a few now. Take a look on the channel. We have a playlist now for the Versus videos, so just go ahead and take a look in there. Thanks for watching. See you next time.